the atheists to go about in their life saying that God does not exist, they have no certainty in life. Because why? Everything is now relative. What is good and evil to you, Jacob? If I asked you, hypothetically, there's a nation that says it is good to take your babies and sacrifice them to your gods, and there's another nation that says, no, that's not true, how would you be able to objectively prove that one nation is right and the other nation, I'll pick that, okay. I got it. And the other nation is wrong? But we can make inferences, can't we? Given the fact that the universe exists. It's not an illusion, is it? You touch me, I touch you.
Yeah.
We exist.
Yeah.
The universe exists. There is matter.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Right. So the matter had a starting point, before which this matter for the universe didn't exist. So who brought, or what brought the universe into existence? It can't be nothing, therefore...
Why can it not be nothing?
Because nothing is the absence of all possible things. Can you imagine, try and imagine that, try and imagine nothing.
Right.
It's a very difficult concept, but it's obvious that if there is absolutely nothing, no power, no energy, no volition, no potential, there's no potential, Jacob. How can non-potentiality bring about something?
It's not only something, it's something which has incredible detail to it. And like I said before, uniformity. So you've got on your finger, you've got 16 points when you make a finger movement. So for me, you need to have one of those points, your chances are very small.
Yeah, so in other words...
One in 16, you need to have two of the 16.
Fingerprints that are the same.
So points of the fingerprints are the same, it's squared, it's 1 in 256. If you to have all of those 16 the same, identical, the chances are 1 in 4 billion. That's just the fingerprint, right? So whatever has made this universe has got to be extremely intelligent and extremely detailed in its design and infinite in its quality.
But before we make that...
I would argue the exact opposite. If any being or something made the universe so that humans could exist in it, it would be incredibly inefficient, incredibly stupid, incredibly, I don't know, because the universe...
You can see that it's not by its design.
Right, the universe is unimaginably big, right? It's like, I don't know how big the observable universe is, over 13 light years across right now.
To show you that it is, and to show you that you're very small and very insignificant.
Right. Okay. So but if you were to be randomly teleported to any point in the universe, what would be your chance of surviving?
Exactly.
That's your argument for something being created so that humans could live in it.
That's another argument. That's the existential argument. How is it that all of a sudden here in this tiny spot in the universe we have everything? We have the ability to, we have all the needs supplies for breathing, the right amount of sunlight, the right heat, all the many different laws in existence, the rain cycle, the winds, everything is just perfect. Once you even see the planets that we have around us.
How can you say the Earth is perfect? Over 70% of the Earth is already uninhabitable for humans because it's covered in water.
Yeah, we use that. If we didn't have water, then we died. If you had a smaller percentage of the Earth, a smaller percentage of the sea, then we would die again. But that's a different argument. Okay, so these are just go back to this infinite regress. You've got something, as we said, you've got out of nothingness. Not only have you got something, which is impossible to start with, you've got a fine-tuning argument.
Yeah.
What's keeping you as an atheist?
There's no evidence. There's no actual evidence.
What evidence are you looking for?
Yeah. What do you need to see in order to? Here's a falsification test for atheism.
I don't need like a
Otherwise, it's
any
just
religion out there always makes positive claims about anything, and none of those positive claims can be or were proven. In fact, most of the positive claims, those are all logical arguments with logical fallacies, and they can all be
Where is the logical fallacy?
debunked by.
Where is the logical fallacy?
I'm not a professional debater. I can't, I'm walking around here and I've heard these arguments a bunch of times, but I'm not prepared every time, every day to debunk these arguments.
Yeah.
But there are people out there, if you watch...
Have I given you an argument that is, or have we given you an argument that is so sophisticated that you require a PhD to figure things out? Or have we given you an argument based upon very easy inferences, very easy thought patterns that you can deduce?
From common sense or something. There's a reason why scientists aren't common people or random people from the street, but they are highly educated in their field and they study it for their lives. So
and there are theists amongst them and there are atheists amongst them. If you have a look at the Islamic tradition, our religion actually, I mean, let's talk about this. The West wouldn't have the Renaissance if it wasn't for the Muslims, right? So, if anything, many scholars, many scientists or something were theists and many were atheists. Exactly.
And it doesn't necessarily have one thing doesn't necessarily have to do with the other thing.
And neither does it necessarily mean that just because there are atheists out there who are claiming that the universe is self-contained, that we roll over and play dead. We still have our mind, we can still think logically, rationally, and if that means that simple thinking leads us to a conclusion that goes against what the atheists have come to in terms of a conclusion, then so be it. What we should be is be sincere towards ourselves and our God-given rationale. Now you said that something brought about the universe. This something could be another universe outside the universe. But if this other universe brought this universe about, the same question still applies to that source. Did it have a beginning, or was it always there? If it was always there, the infinite problem of the infinite regress applies to that. If it has a beginning, the question, you're just shifting it one stage down. You're just kicking the can down the road, as they say. So you have to. So you still have to ask the question: if the universe that brought this universe into existence has a beginning, what brought that universe? Now, if you carry on that chain, it becomes another infinite regress, which is an absurdity. The only solution, if you're a rational creature who can think clearly, is that the source that brought the universe into existence has to be eternal. That's the only other way out of it.
The singularity, that's what it is, right? The singularity is something that is unique, so that's why it's called a singularity. It only happens once, or it's unique in its properties. Why does it have to be a creator? Why can it not be an event, something that we don't know about that happened, before the Big Bang or something?
An event that has a beginning, or an event that's always been there, or a potential event, that's always been there. Is it a potential event that's always been there, or is it a potential event that has a beginning?
If it's a singularity, an event, then it doesn't matter if it's eternal or not, because it's the event where time originated, or where the concept of time was created from.
Okay, but time doesn't exist prior to the potentiality coming into existence, right?
Correct.
Okay, so let me ask you this question. If this timeless potential exists, there's no time, there's only a single instance, this potential so-called singularity. How did it decide to transform from a state of non-potentiality into potentiality? What is the rational mechanism that undergirds this non-potential thing deciding now's the time? Remember, there's no time, but I'm trying to make it easy for you to understand. The question is so absurd, it's like asking, well, what's lower than minus 273 degrees Fahrenheit? There is nothing lower than minus 273 degrees Fahrenheit, according to the scientists. When we talk about a timeless, non-potential entity, it's as good as no entity at all. It has no potential, there is no time. So to say, how did it decide to bring about something is as nonsensical as saying, how did nothing decide to bring something about?
No, it's not, because we cannot know about anything before that, and we cannot know anything outside of Sorry.
So you're agnostic if you're saying I don't know what's happening.
Yeah, I'm an agnostic atheist.
Okay,
right.
so-
That's
not agnostic atheist. That's agnostic between theism and atheism.
no. Agnostic and atheism.
If you're not
agnosticism
sure,
and atheism are two different things.
Yes.
Agnostic means you don't know. Atheist means you don't believe. So I don't believe in a God, but I'm not 100% but I'm not 100% sure that there is no God. I don't say there is no God.
Atheism.
I'm saying I don't believe in a God.
Atheism believe that there is no God.
No, that's what agnostic, like not an agnostic, but agnostic atheism is.
And agnosticism means that you're uncertain about something. You're agnostic about
Agnosticism is a claim on knowledge. Atheism is a claim on belief.
So
you can say.
Can you give me one atheist? Does Richard Dawkins define atheism in this way? Because this is the
Yes.
first. Can you show me, please? And can you Google it and show me?
So Richard Dawkins is an agnostic.
He is an agnostic atheist.
He's an agnostic atheist. Have you heard this?
No, he's not. He admits that there can be some possibility of God.
Okay, he's changed his opinion, has he?
He has, yes. That's right.
So,
Go on.
an agnostic atheist does not believe in the existence of a god or gods, but also does not claim to know whether a god exists or not.
I got you.
And the philosophical position combines atheism, lack of belief, with agnosticism, lack of knowledge.
So you're saying you don't have any knowledge in
So
regards to this?
I'm like as close to 100% sure as you can be without being 100% sure.
That there is no God? Okay, so let's go through that argument
There's
again.
always like a tiny sliver of possibility.
Yeah.
That's why I don't say there is no God. I say I don't believe
That's
in a
fine,
God.
but you don't live your life with such ultra skepticism, do you? You go through life relying upon your knowledge of the law of causality, like we spoke about in the beginning, making inferences to the best explanation based upon your experiences in life. You don't say, for instance, I'm not going to get on a bus because I'm an ultra skeptic that bus doesn't exist. I mean, anyone that lives their life with such ultra skepticism, their entire life would be a self-contradiction because they live life, they've reached the point in life where they're mature enough to make decisions in regards to the most simplest things. But when it comes down to the idea or committing yourself to the idea of the possibility of God, you are so ultra skeptic that you're saying even the slightest doubt is enough for me to deny the existence of an eternal source that brought the universe into existence. Well, let me put it like this, Jacob. Then your only other option is that, well, what is your option? I've given you the options. What other options do you have?
My option is to say I don't know until new evidence arises where at some point can say maybe I know a little bit more. But I don't have the need to say I know something about that. Like I don't have to answer every single question in life with some certainty about something. There are questions
Exactly.
where I can say
That's
I don't
precisely
know,
my point.
and I'm fine with that.
That's precisely my point, Jacob. Now, imagine the probability is leaning far towards the side of there being an eternal source that brought the universe into existence. Now, if this source brought the universe into existence, hear me out. If this source brought the universe into existence, this source must have we know that the universe has, for instance, 4 fundamental forces. That's what the scientists tell us.
Yeah,
Electromagnetism, gravitation, and the 2 nuclear forces, the weak and the strong.
Yep.
And they say that the 4 forces had to have been finely tuned to the point where the probability factor is very, very, very high. Very, very, very low, sorry. Very, very low in terms of these 4 being finely tuned for the universe to turn out the way it has. They say that had these 4 forces just been slightly out of sync, then the universe either wouldn't have begun or it would remain inert. But we know that the universe began and transformed from a point of near enough chaos to relative harmony. Hydrogen transforming into helium. The periodic table is a perfect example of how the universe transformed into more and more sophisticated and heavier elements. Now, that tells us one thing. Whatever brought the universe into existence, number one, it had to have certain attributes. Because there's nothing that we know of that exists except that, Jacob, it must have attributes. So for instance, that thing right there, inanimate as it is, has attributes. It's hard, it's black, it exists in time, and you can give a few other nominal attributes to that. You and I, we're more sophisticated than that. We have more attributes than that. Now the universe, if it's brought into existence by something, this thing has to have at least one attribute, which is potentiality, volition, will. It decided to bring the universe into existence. Number two, this thing has to have a level of power because it implanted within the universe, the singularity if you want to call it, these four fundamental forces that required to be there as a prerequisite for the universe to exist.
This is already...
Just very quickly. Finally, this thing has to have knowledge because you can't have something that has no will, has no power, and has no knowledge such that it explains how this universe came about with these four fundamental forces already implanted as laws. So this to me, Jacob, it implies for the Muslims more that this thing must have been alive than not alive. So there's a verse, I'll end it here and you can fire back with whatever objections you have. There's a verse in the Quran where God says to the Muslims, and one of the companions of our Prophet Muhammad, he said, when I heard this verse, it was only at this point that faith settled into my heart. Meaning he had faith in God, but when he heard this verse, this is when faith came and settled into his heart. The verse has it, or were they created by nothing? Or did they create themselves? Or were they the creators of the heavens and the earth, meaning the universe? Nay, they have no certainty. So God is talking here about certainty. You can transform that into what is the greatest probability factor? That nothing brought the universe into existence or something brought the universe into existence such that it answers these three questions. Nothing cannot bring about something. We did not bring ourselves about because our mother and father brought us about and their mother and father brought them about. We didn't bring the universe about because we're part of the universe, just as our mother and father are part of the universe. There's no fourth option. Like I said, the only fourth option is ultra-skepticism, turn off your brain, throw the key away. So then God says they have no certainty. The atheists who go about in their life saying that God does not exist, they have no certainty in life. Because why? Everything is now relative. What is good and evil to you, Jacob? If I asked you, hypothetically, there's a nation that says it is good to take your babies and sacrifice them to your gods, and there's another nation that says, no, that's not true. How would you be able to objectively prove that one nation is right and the other nation, I'll pick that, okay. I got it. And the other nation is wrong? How would you be able to objectively prove that without referring to yourself and nothing beyond yourself?
So there are multiple views on this in morality. Like some people say objective morality doesn't exist. Some say it does. Some say it requires a God to have objective morality, and some say it doesn't. I don't think there is objective morality. I don't think you can say something about anything where it is always evil. Like you always have to apply context to it. Any decision you make, or you can make, I could build a hypothetical around that where that decision would be amoral or it would be moral.
Based upon whose measurement? Based upon yours, a collective, a society? Who would it be based upon? And how do you know that that decision is good or evil? I'll give you an example. Oops. Everything's falling apart. I'll give you an example.
There's already the question of what's good and evil, and is the existence of good and evil even relevant?
I'll tell you why it's relevant. If a nation out there decides that we're going to bomb the hell out of the existence of another nation whose houses that we've usurped, we've given them a small portion of land, and now we've come to the conclusion that collectively we're going to exterminate that nation and eradicate them to the point where over 680,000 people have died, of which almost 50% are children under the age of, I think it was 13 or 14. Is that good or is that evil? And does it matter to you?
It's like, right, I know you're probably talking about Palestine and Gaza and Israel. But of course, I would call that right now evil.
Why?
Because it's not beneficial to humanity.
To humanity.
Yeah.
So how
To society.
So how would you convince that country that has come to the collective conclusion that it's in their best interest to do that? How would you convince them that they're wrong and you're right? What type of arguments would you use to convince them that it's bad for humanity and it's not good for them? Can you give me some type of argument that can convince them?
I can't solve the Middle Eastern crisis. It's been going on for centuries. But
So do you have an argument for how we might be able to do this without actually appealing to them outside of themselves? Because ultimately, it's England or America's decision against another country. Now the question then arises, well, what makes England and America's decision-making more correct than that other country? They're all humans. One side isn't like a superior human beings in comparison to another. We all use the same rationale. How do we objectively prove that one is right and one is wrong?
again, it doesn't necessarily mean that anything can be objectively proven like that in morality.
Okay, so how would you do that then? How would you be able to prove that?
What do you mean? How would I be able to?
You just said that it doesn't mean that we can't objectively prove something.
It presupposes that objective truth or objective morality exists. But I already said I don't think objective morality exists. So
I understand that.
I cannot prove anything objectively in morality.
So now multiply Jacob by however big the UK's population is, and what makes this position of, well, I can't objectively prove morality, what makes our judgment now that what they're doing is wrong viable? How would we be able to enforce that? The only way we can do that, Jacob, is by presupposing, you mentioned the word presuppositions, is by presupposing that our moral judgment is superior to theirs. But how would you prove that without going beyond yourselves? It's just my word against theirs, or my society's word against their society. How would you be able to prove it?
I think by the consequences of the actions I would take.
Yeah, but they're saying that it's good, because they're basing it on what's known as empire building. Every country has a concept of empire building. America's concept of empire building is very overt. If you go to the internet and just type that in, you'll find that their empire building they've been planning it 20, 30 years in advance. How they're going to take over certain countries, how they're going to destabilize certain countries if it's in their best interest. Now, if that's good enough for America, why isn't it good enough for this country who's come to the conclusion that it's in our best interest, it's expedient for us to get rid of these people because we need to expand our empire?
Because God helps America and sends them into those actions.
There you go. So he's using an objective standard.
And I say that
but he's saying... You got me worried though, you know that. Nice one. Go on.
Sorry, I'll be quiet.
It's fine, you can weigh in if you want.
So he's, we're talking about this from a theist and atheist perspective. So I'm trying to get across to him the idea that if there is no objective morality, there is no God, there's no objective morality, then how is it possible for one country to be able to determine the right action or the wrong action of another nation? It's always going to be my word against theirs, or my nation's word against their nation's word.
Right, and you can always look at the consequences. I'm fairly utilitarian, so if an action doesn't benefit or is to the actual detriment of other human beings, then that's an action I wouldn't take usually.
Jacob, you know what? Islam is utilitarian as well. Utilitarianism, if you look at the Quran and the Islamic tradition, have you heard of the word halal and haram?
Yeah.
Halal means what God has made permissible, and haram means what God has made impermissible. Our understanding of that is that, and here's the principle, that God has not made anything halal except that there's greater good in it than harm. So we don't deny that something halal may have some harm in it. Similarly, it may be that what Allah has made haram, there may be some good in it, but the thing that is bad therein is far worse. So for instance, I'll give you a crude example. In fact, it's not a crude example, it's something that you find in the Quran. God says about alcohol, in it is some good. but the evil is far greater. So shun such abominations that you may prosper. Now, I don't need to tell you that alcoholism is a poison. Alcohol is a poison, and alcoholism is a multi-billion-dollar industry that, for the reasons of which 70% of crimes that take place in this country occur under the influence of alcohol. Now, the point here is that utilitarianism itself must be based upon something beyond ourselves. Because ultimately, we can only go so far in terms of utilitarianism. So for instance, Jacob, you and me, right?
Yeah.
If we go into business, we know instinctually that there are certain ways of behavior that we need to implement in order for the business to be successful. If I lie and cheat, it's not going to be conducive for our relationship, is it? No.
Probably not.
Yeah, it won't be, because I could lie and cheat and take the money and the business would collapse, or potentially could collapse, and leave you out of pocket, right? And leading to some type of injustice. But we don't need to live in a society that's sophisticated to know these rules. We can know this whether we're living in the middle of a jungle, whether we're, a primitive so-called barbaric tribe, or whether we're living in a city. Human beings instinctually have within them this concept of utilitarianism. We need to cooperate so that it is in our best interest of survival. Make sense?
Yeah, humans are social creatures, and
precisely,
like the tribe or whatever is. That's pretty much
how we'll be able to survive and flourish.
Mostly.
Yes. No, always. Because otherwise, if the majority turn out to be people who hold to the concept that we're going to do things for our own best interest at the expense of society, eventually the society will essentially collapse, because the evil will outweigh the good.
Yeah.
And what is evil and good? A standard by which we can measure how we're going to be able to live the best version of ourselves, whether individualistically, in a one-on-one relationship, communally, and societally. So we would say that this is a sense of objective morality that God has implanted within every human being. This objective morality, this in Arabic is known as fitra. And this fitra is something that also allows us to know what truth is. Because part of this fitra are those fundamental laws that we require to affirm in order to make truth claims. Like, for instance, Jacob, if I said to you that it's possible for something like a circle and its opposite, a non-circle, to conceptually exist at the same time, you would say, well, that doesn't make any sense. A circle conceptually will always be a circle. It can't be a square. You can't have, existing at the same time, a squared circle or a married bachelor.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if you deny this fundamental law, this properly basic law, no matter what you say, like for instance, my name is Hamza. Well, that's a truth claim. But because I'm denying that something and its opposite can be true at the same time, it's possible I am not Hamza at that same time. So when I make a claim, I'm Hamza, it's possible, because I've denied this law of contradiction, that I am not Hamza at the same time. Now suddenly, all truth claims mean nothing. It leads to an absurdity.
Okay.
So the world itself, I should say the way human beings have been created, they've been created with an understanding of something that is implanted within them that allows us to make sense of the world. And these are properly basic laws that allow us to then infer, to the best explanation that we have, to the capacity that we have, because not everyone's an Einstein, right? To be able to recognize, well, I can ask questions regarding the beginning of the world that can only be answered through my affirmation of these fundamental laws. Without them, no truth can exist for me. No truth can make sense for me. So we would say, therefore, the reason why the majority of humankind have always believed in a transcendent source outside of itself is because of these fundamental laws, this fundamental nature that human beings have been created upon. So I remember coming across this, you might find this funny, Abdullah. I remember coming across a recent, like a meme on Instagram, right? Where it says, asking for the existence of God whilst living in the world is like a fish asking for the existence of H2O whilst swimming in the sea. Meaning the world's existence is an evidence that there has to be something outside of ourselves that's incredibly powerful, incredibly knowledgeable, incredibly wise, and has volition. And this points to this thing points to a source that isn't random in nature, but something that has to be alive and conscious. Because if you're alive and you have power, you have will, you have knowledge, you have wisdom, you have mercy, you have love, and you know these to be true intuitively because you're implementing them all the time. If that's true for you, if that's true for things equal to you or things greater than you, then the one that brought the universe into existence, it has to be more true for that thing. That thing has to have knowledge equal to or greater than the thing that it brought into existence. That's all right. So in the Quran, God appeals to mankind. I don't know if you've ever read the Quran, but if you haven't, it reads very differently to the Bible. The Quran, we believe, are the very words of God. So when you read the Quran, you come away thinking, this can't be the speech of mankind. It can't be the speech of a illiterate man named Muhammad, let alone the speech of some of the greatest minds of the 7th century. It talks about things that delve into morality. It gives arguments against the idea of atheism. It gives arguments against the idea of multiple absolute beings. It laid down the foundations for the Muslim scholars to rationalize how it's impossible for there not to be a creator than for there to be a creator. That there has to be a creator, in other words. So the Quran, for instance, invites Muslims to look at the world. It says, we will show them our signs within the furthest horizons, meaning within the universe, the creation outside of ourselves, and also within ourselves, until it becomes clear to them that this, the Quran, is the truth. And is it not enough for them that the Lord is a witness over all things? Meaning the one that brought the universe into existence, because it is the source of the sustenance of the creation. It brought the universe about. The universe progresses from that instance when it was brought into effect to the next point in time. And the fact that the universe was brought into existence by a source of incredible power and all these attributes that it has, it must have also been involved to sustain it to the next point in time. And if that's true for the next point, it must have been there to sustain it and progress it to the next point. So the idea of a deist concept of God, the God that brings the universe into existence and then just sits back and says, it'll exist by itself, doesn't make any sense. Because if the beginning of the universe is contingent upon the necessary thing, then the universe's persistence has to be predicated on this necessary thing. That's how we've argued. Now, admittedly, belief in God is faith. There is an element of faith in there because you can't see God. We say God is outside of the universe. But the handiwork of God is an example of the fact that God exists. Just like in our inferences to the best explanation, the law of causality that we use to understand intuitively, Jacob, that camera could not have come about through chance and probability. Everything in the world points to us, telling us that the more sophisticated the product, the more likely it is that there was a cause behind it that is alive and has certain necessary attributes. That's why some of our scholars said that when the Bedouin Arabs, you know what the Bedouin Arabs are? They're very unsophisticated, simple people who live their daily day-to-day. Even they recognize that when they see the dung of a camel, they don't believe that the dung came about through chance and probability. Because their worldview, their experiences tell them, and because they're so close to nature, they say there has to be a camel that brought that dung into existence.
Of course, they say there has to be a camel because they know the process by which the camel dung comes about. They know
the time.
Precisely,
and we have seen a camel taking a dump.
Yes,
and so that's how they know
about that. A lot of these things you're saying, I don't know. So, are we making a step forward now? Because you're saying you have some confidence in that.
How about the umbrella in your hand? Have you seen the maker of the umbrella?
I don't
You don't need to, do you?
I don't. I know the process of making an umbrella.
Exactly.
I know.
Do you know the process of making a quantum computer? I don't.
I could probably look it up.
But it requires not just one human being. It requires a people coming together, a conglomerate, because the making of a quantum computer is very sophisticated, and it requires a collective mind. Now, what we're trying to put across to you is the following, Jacob. If that's true for the sum of the parts, it has to be true for the whole, because the whole is more sophisticated than the sum of the parts. So if the sum of the parts, like for instance the quantum computer, was brought about by multiple human beings because it requires a collective intelligence to the point where a single intelligence is not enough. If the universe was brought about and it is sophisticated, but it could only have been brought about by a single source, this source must have had the knowledge that is far greater. So if it's true that the collective that brought about the quantum computer is alive, and that collective has far greater knowledge than any one single thing within that collective, it makes sense inferentially that the creator that brought the universe into existence has to have far greater knowledge than that collective. This points to something that's alive.
Would you say that the processes that happen all the time in the universe have intelligence?
We say that the processes collectively, when you look at them, they are all interconnected. Look at
the process doesn't have intelligence. The master, really.
The master has it. Look at the processes from the very lowest level, subatomic particles. We know that the subatomic particles, or we're being told, the subatomic particles, according to our current theory of physics, tells us that there is a sea of energy from which virtual particles arise. So from those virtual particles, you get the subatomic particles, the gluons, the muons, the up, down, left, right, the colors that they've identified. But all of these collectively come together to create what? The next stage of our universe, which is the atomic level. You have the electrons perfectly balanced against the protons. You have the neutrons that now they are saying that even the neutrons have a purpose. They're not entirely neutral. You then have the universe where the point where my hand doesn't go through you, it stops because the electrons have that necessary inbuilt law that allows them to repel each other such that matter makes sense. So if you look at the way the universe is structured, everything has its purpose. Everything is interconnected. Now, if that's true for the entirety of the universe, it has to be true for us. How is it that the universe collectively has purposes, but we don't have a purpose? We just live and we die. When everything, Jacob, everything points to us having a purpose. When we are born, people like Noam Chomsky, they say that children are born with an inbuilt ability for language. That's extraordinary. Before that, they claimed that there was no ability within the child. The child just picked up whatever it could through learning, hearing, an external thing. Now they're agreeing that what the Muslims have been saying from the beginning, that we are haywanun natiq, we are the speaking creatures. We're not animals. So our scholars, they took from our scriptures the understanding of life, and they came to the conclusion that human beings, they speak because they have in them the fitrah, the inbuilt ability to be able to communicate.
The ability to communicate arose from centuries, millennia, and millions of years of evolution. And other animals do actually also speak and communicate. Like, they don't do it on the level of humans, because humans are in that regard the most evolved creatures out there that we know of.
Which places us at a potentially privileged position, right? We're in a privileged position precisely because we consider our ability to speak as the means of differentiating us from the animal kingdom.
Our ability to cooperate, our ability to speak, our ability to use tools, etc.
Our ability to love
from over millions of years.
Exactly.
Did give us an advantage in nature that placed us in the position that we are right now. So we're the dominating species on Earth, but we weren't always, because we didn't always exist. And we might not always be, because, I don't know, we might eradicate ourselves soon, something, I don't know.
Let's hope we don't. Hopefully, I think I have a confidence in the human species that eventually we'll be able to rectify our mistakes by learning from them. In fact, there's a verse in the Quran that speaks about evil. It says, evil has appeared in the land and the sea because of what the hands of men have earned. We human beings, when we turn away from the objective morality, a source beyond ourselves, what's going to occur, Jacob, is we have to fill in the vacuum that we've created. That vacuum is us improvising through life. So I think, and I don't even need to think, it's happened cyclically over the human saga, where when we've turned away from the objective source outside of ourselves, we improvise, and we therefore end up creating an environment that leads to greater evil. We learn from that evil by suffering, and then we rectify ourselves. So God has spoken about this in the Quran. He says that evil is not something that God commands. God didn't tell us to do evil. He says in the Quran that he says that evil has appeared in the land and the sea because of what the hands of men have earned, so that they may taste a portion of that evil and return back to God in repentance. So God doesn't tell us. In fact, God tells us the opposite. God says, indeed, we have sent down a book, which is an explanation of all necessary things. It is a guidance, it is a mercy, and it is a glad tiding for those who believe. So in other words, the condition here is, in order for a person to live their best version, they have to submit themselves, Jacob, to the obvious that there is something objective outside of ourselves, and this something objective is involved in sustaining the universe, which includes ourselves. Now, the verse continues and says, truly God, He commands to all that is adl. Adl is all things that are just. Wal-ihsan, and the best of all things. Wal-ihsan, and He tells you to enjoin this upon each other, to your kith and kin. But He's forbidden you from al-fahsha, which is all evil things, all things that are forbidden, and injustices. And this is what He has ordained for you, so that you may use your intelligence. So why are human beings at this present moment in time, Jacob, falling into this point of life where human beings are oppressing human beings at a level that we've never experienced before? Why do the world wars take place? Why is one country eradicating another? Why is one country, one of the richest countries in the world, systematically taking a nation who have had such a rich heritage and systematically indoctrinating them in what they call universities, but what are really in sort of prisons for children in their tens of thousands, being mass indoctrinated away from their religion that they've freely chosen to choose. Why that is because human beings have turned away from that objective standard. When you do that, you relativize morality, and then it's just my word against yours, my nation's word against your nation, and it's a free-for-all for people to do whatever they want. This is the issue. When you take God out of the equation, then what you have to deal with is relative morality.
I heavily disagree with lots of things that you just said right now. Obviously universities aren't prisons and people aren't indoctrinated.
I'm talking about the people, the Uyghur community in China, where the Chinese Han people, the government led by the Hans, they've taken the people in the north in Xinjiang, and they've, for almost coming on a decade now, not only persecuted them, but castrated their women so that they can't procreate, taking the children and placed them in their tens of thousands into these so-called universities, but they're actually de-indoctrination centers to try and deprogram the Muslims. The Muslims had been forbidden from fasting. I think there are still provinces within that area where the Uyghur people are not. If you want to know a little bit more about this, there's a lovely restaurant run by a Uyghur gentleman in central London called Turpan. Go and speak to him. He's from that country.
I don't know much about that, but
you understand the point I'm saying, right?
Similar things
Relative
have happened
morality.
throughout history on any side. Like any religion you can take and say, and point to some point in time where they have invaded a country or another religion or anything and have forced their beliefs on them, and you can do that in the name of whatever, in the name of their God, or in the name of their religion or their prophet or anything, or in the name of deprogramming or whatever you may call it. So that's not an argument. Like, you cannot say
it's not an argument for what? For the existence of God, or for the existence of morality, for the existence of good and evil?
The argument is a necessity for this. Otherwise, for your belief in God. Otherwise,
But if you say
relative. We've dealt with there being a good God. Now we're explaining to your heart why it's necessary for you to believe in this. Otherwise, this is how dangerous it can become. That's what we're saying.
But then again, you have the same problem because, like I just said, the same thing happens from people that believe in God, in any God.
In what way? In the sense that they decide that it's okay for them to go and kill babies or kill children?
Right.
Because I can promise you Islam doesn't actually say that.
I don't know, but Muslims have carried out those acts in the name of their religion.
What, as in killed babies?
Yeah, like look at what you said. Islam was the height of science in, I don't know, 1,000 years ago or something. And then some fundamentalist Muslims have burned all the universities down, have killed all those people that disagree or like don't believe the way that they do, like the fundamentalist mullahs, and in the name of their religion. So
can you give me an example of this where the Muslims have done this? And I'm talking about not fringe. I'm not talking about the black sheep in society, like the KKK or ISIS, who are so small in number that the majority of Muslims right across the world immediately condemn them. I'm not talking about the heterodox sects in the past, like for instance, the heterodox sect known as the Kharijites. They were a small portion and they were known as heterodox, they were designated as heterodox. Do you know what heterodox means?
no.
Not part of orthodoxy. They're not part of the true understanding of Islam. True understanding of Islam.
True understanding of Islam is Islam by whose definition?
By God's definition. So we have we believe in God, we have a
But
morale.
they are saying the same thing. They have their interpretation of Islam.
Yeah, so how do we now solve the problem?
This is not the Bible. We can't just take any old interpretation and make it say anything.
So we have a standard for that.
Because you've lived in a Christian society or Christian-dominated society, so you believe that all religions are going to be.
But they are saying the same thing. They are saying they're pointing to the Quran in the same way that you are, and they are saying my interpretation is the true interpretation.
Yeah, so what's the solution?
They don't even say that. They don't even say that. They say my Islam is
true and
is
your
the only
Islam is false.
Correct.
Exactly. So how do we solve the problem?
I don't know. How do you solve
Very
the
good question. Exactly. That's the first question, right? So there's a verse in the Quran.
I don't have that problem because I don't believe in that.
He's answering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know you don't believe that, but obviously you've given this example.
Yeah.
As if to say that we don't have a solution, but there is a solution. I'll give it to you. The solution is something that's been implemented by the majority of Muslims across the world, whether from Malaysia all the way across to Canada, America, etc. Right? The Muslim collective, the reason why we've condemned the likes of ISIS, the reason why we fought against them, and we continue to fight against them, is because of the body of evidence that we have from our scripture that tells us, chapter 4, verse 59, it says, O you who believe, meaning the Muslims, obey God, obey his messenger, and obey those who have been placed in authority amongst you. If you differ in anything, refer it back to God and his messenger, and that is the best form of interpretation for you. That's the best form of interpretation. Now, when ISIS come with a verse from the Quran, and they claim this is our legitimacy for killing non-Muslims, or even killing Muslims, because they don't care about the differentiation between a Muslim and a non-Muslim. They'll kill anyone that they believe to be non-Muslims, and that can include the majority of the Muslims, which they have done. Now, what do? We take that verse and we ask ourselves, is this like relative morality, where it's my word against yours? Or is there an objective standard beyond the two of us, ISIS and the Orthodox Muslim, to be able to determine the correct understanding of the verse? Well, there is. Our religion has been preserved to such a point where we have the words of the Messenger of God, we have the words of his companions who were his students, and they wrote down how the verses are to be interpreted from the Quran, including those verses that were revealed in regards to war, so that the Muslims can. I think that was a flash.
Yeah, I thought it was lightning, but it was a flash.
So that the Muslims can understand their religion correctly. So we go back to how the companions of the Prophet understood this. We go back to the Prophet and we ask ourselves, okay, this verse that you're applying as a justification for the killing of Muslims and non-Muslims without reason. Is this how the Prophet did it? And we find that no, it's impossible.
You need
to go?
Yeah, I think we have some more points on the list, but
Okay, no problem. Thank you for your time.
it was very
Thank you for your
interesting.
time.
Thank you.
Jacob, thank you very much.
for talking.
Listen, if it's created any curiosity, pick up the Quran, have a read. At least you'll be able to understand your fellow Muslim a little bit better, right?
I'm never against reading.
That's it, exactly. Give it a read. I mean, you've read the Bible, right?
I've read,
Parts of the Bible?
yeah, I've read most of the Bible, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Read the Quran, you'll find that this is quite...
Did you persuade him?
Huh? Oh, are you the mother?
I think yeah.
Okay, you know, mother, I think you know him better than I do.
Yeah.
So if I say to you, he has a stubborn streak, no, I'm joking.
That's why I'm asking if you were able to persuade him.
Let's,
No.
maybe you guys can have a conversation over that as you're walking away, you know? Nice one, Jacob. Listen, nice one, right?
Very nice talking to you.
And you too. All the best. No way. Where are you from, by the way?
Germany.
Oh, Germany. Nice. Nice. Okay, cool. I recently came across a news report. Actually, I was going to say the news report apparently has it that Muhammad, the name Muhammad, has become one of the most popular names in Germany. Is that true?
Could be. I don't know. Yeah, probably in Berlin, definitely.
In Germany and also in Berlin.
Yeah.
Okay, so quite a few Muslims there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I know I know you guys love your donut now.
Oh, we're from Berlin, so of course. It's
Exactly.
like
The hub of donut, right? Just like this, the favorite dish of England used to be fish and chips. Now it's curry.
I know that.
And the funny thing is, they like a curry that wasn't even. If you ask the Indians and the Pakistanis, they don't even have that curry in Pakistan and India. The vindaloo, right? It was specifically invented
Yeah.
for the taste buds of the Britishers.
Like, donut has been invented in Berlin as well. So
Yes. Yeah.
Muslims in Germany are Turkish.
Yes.
lots of
Is it? A lot of Arabs now as well. I might just come down and visit then. Sure. In other words, there's quite a bit of halal there, right? Halal food. Yeah. Nice one. Guys, listen. Safe journey home. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah.